Hello to everyone out there listening in the non-space that is the internet. This is your friend and pal, J.Ishiro Finney, or Josh Finney, author of such books as Case File Arkham, World War Kaiju, Utopiates, and Titanium Rain. Anyway, today I am following up Kat's wonderful reading of her article that she wrote in 2009 called Power Girl, What the Fuck? So I've got her here now to talk shop.
Thank you for having me on.
So in 2009, when you wrote that article, where did that come from?
Well, back in 2009, what I saw as the decline of the big two as far as quality and storytelling, I came into reading comics seriously right around 2000.
I thought you were just like me and you read like tons and tons of X-Men in your high school years.
No, actually, I didn't. I was a huge X-Men fan, but I was a little kid when, the best of the Claremont years were coming out. I was borrowing, sometimes stealing issues from my best friend Matthew at the time. So I was reading them piecemeal. I was reading them in bits and pieces, not really getting the straight story until the animated series came out.
So you read them as you could.
Exactly. Never could get to the comic book store because there wasn't a comic book store near me.
The wonders of Inglewood, living in a slum full of gunfire.
Exactly. And Matthew did not go to my school anymore. So basically, I didn't get to read comics until summer hit because that's when I got to hang out with him. And
did your mom not support comics?
She never said no, but there was always reasons why we couldn't make it to the comic book store that day. So let's put it that way. And then it wasn't until I was in high school that I got back into comics. But it wasn't with superheroes. It was with Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, the indie books, and then Matt Wagner and Grendel. Wasn't until the early 2000s that I started reading superheroes, and for the most part I read DC. I didn't read much Marvel at the time. I didn't get back into Marvel until later in the 2000s. What really drew me to superheroes of that era, specifically Jeff Johns' era, is, okay, this is going to sound cliche. Everybody talks about how, in a post-Watchmen era, you have all these deconstructions of superheroes. And yes, that was a draw. But specifically Jeff Johns' era, it wasn't a deconstruction of the superhero myth. It was really digging down and portraying them as people.
But it was also kind of a celebration of their mythology.
It was. And linking all of this back to Power Girl, since her history was so messed up, quite frankly, after Crisis, I loved how he handled that and how she herself was going through a personality crisis as to who she really was. And me coming out of college, really looking around and trying to figure out what the hell am I doing with my life, along with other personal issues, that really spoke to me. So when I wrote that article, Power Girl, What the Fuck, it was, you're taking this character that is kind of tortured by her lack of a past and dumbing her down. And
they kind of made her into a joke. I mean, it was all boob jokes and how sexist. And
jokes are supposed to be funny.
Well, she was the butt of the joke.
But she wasn't. She wasn't supposed to be. No, men were supposed to be the butt of the jokes. That was the other thing that disgusted me about it. I hate how comics have turned to making fun of and ridiculing, let's face it, their main reading audience, which is men. There's nothing wrong with being a male reading the books that you love, and there's nothing wrong with a certain genre of fiction primarily being written for and enjoyed by men. There's nothing wrong with that.
So what I recall back in 2009 is that you had gotten into DC, you'd really loved these characters. It was, I remember years ago I had shown you Kingdom Come and you were just like,
well, that's really, you showing me Kingdom Come is what got me into reading superheroes. I'm like, okay, I need to readdress this.
Well, yeah, because like you, my introduction was the X-Men, which Claremont's X-Men, which I still love to this day, and well, I don't know, I would say some of the best comics writing ever. But it was Kingdom Come that really opened the door to the DC mythology for me. And I recall you getting very much into Power Girl and you seeing a lot of yourself in that because I don't know how much we want to share, but you had your own conflicted sense of who you were. And
I've talked about it before. I'll go ahead and state
your
it.
anger.
I was dealing with being bipolar and coming to terms with the fact that I did indeed have a mental disorder. And it was around that time that I was diagnosed. And I had anger issues and I had issues with where did I stand in the world. And Power Girl's plight definitely fit into that.
And I recall that without getting into your past, there was a lot of you looking back and saying, none of this is true. All this stuff I'd been told isn't true. So it really spoke to you. And then also to top it off, she's got your build and she kicked the crap out of Black Adam.
Yes, indeed. Black Adam is definitely, one of the most powerful, villains in the DCU, and she kicked his ass.
Well, she lost that fight, but she almost kicked his ass.
Well, it's the fact that she held her own, and
against a god.
Yeah. Well, a man made up of several gods. I mean, come on. That's amazing. Anyway, the point being that the character really did speak to me on a variety of levels, and they basically turned her into a one note. And I think my commentary back then in 2009 holds just as true today as it did back then, if not more so, because of how many more characters, that were well-rounded, well-developed, full characters, and they've dumbed them down to, let's take we need to have a Black Spider-Man, so we're gonna have Miles Morales. Nothing against the character. In fact, I kind of like the character, but the problem is that Miles Morales is Black Mexican Spider-Man.
Isn't he gay too?
Is he gay too?
I don't know.
It's basically he's talking points. He's a diversity hire. And I hate to put it in that terms because I like the character. If they had created a character that perhaps, had the spider motif and he was a character first and a diversity quota second, I think that would have been amazing.
It would have been much better if in conversations around the comic shop they called him Miles Morales, not Black Mexican Spider-Man.
Yeah, exactly. And, this new Ms. Marvel, she's Muslim Ms. Marvel. She's not a character.
Do you even know her name? I don't.
I don't know her name, unfortunately. I don't. I just know her as Muslim Miss Marvel because that's the only way anybody talks about her. And actually, it wasn't until very recently that I even found out what her abilities were. The only thing anybody talked about was that she was the new Ms. Marvel, and if you didn't like her, you were racist.
Well, I actually heard that her superpower was that she could scream Islamophobia and that everyone suddenly just stopped.
Stop people in their tracks.
Yeah, suddenly no one wanted to hit her anymore, and everyone got terrified.
But
I want one where like what is it? Ambush Bug decides to draw a picture of Muhammad in front of her.
See, now, and that, we're laughing, but I'm waiting for them to make another, character that can break the fourth wall, like Ambush Bug and Deadpool and She-Hulk. I'm waiting for them to make another one that's going to turn and look at the audience and tell them that they're racist or sexist. And I'm not joking. I'm waiting for that to happen.
Well, that might have actually happened in Squirrel Girl.
Oh, did it?
She talks to the reader all the time,
Oh,
apparently.
dear God. You can't see me. I'm rubbing my eyes. That hurts.
I will narrate to the audience what is happening. Kat has just made a pained look upon her face, and her eyes have scrunched up, and her hands are now over her face, and she's shaking her head as she tries to fight back the vomit.
Oh, good God. You can't make this shit up. You really can't. I wish you could, but you can't.
So yeah, what really struck me about that article was that it's just as relevant, if not more so now. And the fact is everyone keeps thinking this only started a couple years ago. But you and I saw this happening from the inside.
We did. I know other people in the industry did. And nobody listened. They figured, well, The free market won't support this type of thing. It'll eventually go away. Or once people stop buying these books, then it'll go away. Yes, logically speaking, I fully and completely believe in the free market and that the free market does dictate these things. But the fact is that only works if a company is actually having a vested interest in making money.
Well, the other excuse I recall everyone making is, oh, just let them have this book. Let them have this book and we'll just keep doing our superheroes. And eventually it became the entire company.
And then they're shocked that nobody buys their books, and instead of changing their ways, they double down. Yeah. And I know for the more recent books, I've been talking more about Marvel than DC, and that's because, well, Marvel is the worst of the two at the moment, doing that.
I don't know. You've got Martian Manhunter talking about how we need to get rid of walls.
I'm not going to get into that right now.
Kat right now is burying her face in her hands again as she looks like she's about to fight back even another retching vomit storm.
I'm not going to get into that because the logic train on that is just... Anyway, for me personally, my biggest issue is I hate the rhetoric of all males, specifically white males, are sexist rapists, and that if you don't buy this book with a strong female protagonist, that you are a sexist rapist and that you should go to hell. I hate that narrative. I hate it with a passion. Like I said, there is nothing wrong with comics being largely read by men.
The thing that I recall also, and this extends to video games and role-playing games and, what they call geek culture now on television, Doctor Who and all that. When I met you, you were the real deal. You had earned your way into the circle. You were just another fan. There was nothing fake about you. I mean, I even, when I met you, she's all, yeah, I have every Doctor Who episode pirated off of PBS, and I love Gundams. And my initial thought is, sure you do, honey. Yeah, it was my initial thought was, oh yeah, you're just trying to impress me. But you're cute, so it's okay. And I walked into a room, and lo and behold, there was a wall full of video cassettes of Doctor Who pirated off of PBS.
Yep.
A ceiling-to-floor bookshelf full of Gundam models she'd built, and then I wanted to get in her pants.
That's the other thing, is with Star Wars, Star Trek, science fiction, even fantasy, any genre at all, any genre you can name for the most part, with the exception of, I would say, romance novels. If you just tell stories, the audience will find you, and that audience is going to be diverse. Yes, you may have more people on one side than another, but that's with anything. The audience will find you. The second you start writing things specifically for, we specifically want women, you're going to lose. And the only time I would say that is not the case is with romance novels, because let's face it, guys have porn. Romance novels are porn, but, because it's a written text, it's not a visual. Chicks feel more comfortable with it. So, fine then. Guys have porn, girls have romance novels. It's the exact same thing, and anybody who says differently is lying to themselves.
So another thing that takes me back to 2009, back in those days, when you seemed to be the screaming Cassandra that no one was listening to about this horrible poison that was flooding in of social justice, as we call it now, is you were the real deal. I mean, you had always been a geek girl. You'd always been accepted. You'd never been treated badly. People respected you. And the next thing you know, you're flooded with soy boys and hipster chicks that were acting just like, in high school, who stepped in and suddenly, no, you had to prove yourself to them.
Well, it wasn't that I had to prove myself to them. No, it was they were going to show me how I was wrong so that I would publicly lick their boots.
And I remember time after time after time at the booth when we were selling books, you would get these little cliques of feminist cunts who are now the people running the industry who would come up and harass you.
No, that's true. They would come up and... First off, they wouldn't believe me that I was running the company. They would start telling me that I needed to, stop working for the man. And I'd say, no, I work this is my own company. And basically what it was is they wanted me to work for them and to kiss their asses. And when I said, no, this is my company, then they'd get all upset and they'd say, well, you're not publishing things for us. And it's like, exactly, I'm not. I'm publishing things that I want to publish.
You need to publish our all-girl anthology. How many times did that happen?
A lot. And I'm like, no. And they're like, well, why? I'm like, well, because you're singing dogs. Nobody's paying attention to you because you're actually producing good material. They're paying attention to you because you're chicks. And that's not what I'm going to publish. That's not what I'm going to make my money off of. I want to make my money off of good stories. And you're a sideshow freak. No.
Second, the other thing that used to enrage you, and this brings it back down to Power Girl, was the sheer number of soy boys that either at conventions or worse, interviews, seemed obsessed with asking you, well, how does Power Girl's boobs make you feel? As if that you were supposed to be mad about it or feel uncomfortable. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Tell that story.
Well, which one? I mean, there's several. I'll wrap it all up in basics. They would say, don't you feel like, Power Girl is being objectified? I'm like, no. And that's the thing is, I wouldn't even get into it. Just no. It's like, well, don't you feel that it's very sexist, her portrayal? No. Well, don't you feel that it diminishes you? No. There was one time where the guy kept like trying to make me feel like I should feel like a victim. And at the time at conventions, boobs sell at conventions. I'm not going to lie. Cleavage sells books. And so
It is a superpower.
It is a superpower. So I would wear a cleavage revealing top. And yes, Mother Nature was very kind to me. And so he would say these things and I just finally went, look, you've noticed these. Do you really think I'm going to feel objectified by Power Girl? And he got really annoyed and ended the interview. And as far as I know, it never happened. So,
yeah, they always came off as subway gropers.
At best.
And I remember the number of times that we had interviews where it was like over the phone or over the internet and there was no face-to-face contact. It'd be going along and people would ask me all the questions that you would expect to be asked as a creator. And then they'd get to you and the first thing out of their mouth is, are you bothered by Power Girl's boobs?
No. The first thing out of their mouth was, as a woman, and I would immediately stop them and say, rephrase that question without that, because I don't do anything as a woman. Sometimes they were able to do it, and sometimes I blue screened their brain and they couldn't form sentences after that. But then they would say, do you feel objectified by Power Girl's boobs? And it's just no.
And let me tell you, to listeners out there, she does not do anything as a woman. I mean, when she goes in the bathroom, it is a complete mess. But at least she does not do it.
No, that was before you got me the funnel.
Well, that certainly went into the gutter. So, is there anything else specifically about that article and now that you feel applies?
As I said, I think that article is more relevant now than when I wrote it, for the sheer fact that at the time I wrote it just on the cusp of I was seeing a trend that I disliked and I was an angry fan, writing in the only way that I knew how to get in touch with the powers that be at DC, which is you write a blog and you hope somebody reads it. Nowadays, they don't care about their readers. They don't care about their readers. They don't care about their fans. Their sales are the worst they have ever been. Nobody's buying their books, and the free market doesn't work because they don't care about making money. They care about appeasing social justice for some strange reason. I have no idea why. They are destroying our modern mythology. Superheroes are our modern pantheon. They are our modern gods, and they are trying to deconstruct and destroy them. There's nothing wrong with superheroes evolving with the time. I want characters to evolve with the times, but not at the cost of losing what made them great to begin with. What made Power Girl, Wonder Woman, any female character, any male character. Whoever that character is, if they lose what made them so iconic in the first place, they're no longer the same character. You've killed them.
We're constantly hearing about body types. There needs to be a diversity of body types. And there's this hard push for, well, you need more fat women, you need this, you need that. But when it comes to women of your build, and just to put it bluntly, Kat worked her ass off for this, but she has an athletic build and very large boobs. That is apparently the one forbidden body type. Why?
Because it's the ideal. Again, these characters are supposed to be gods. They're supposed to be the height of humanity. And body type is a most quickest ways of depicting somebody as being the epitome of what is best with humanity. And SJWs and a lot of people have demonstrated they don't want to achieve anything. They don't want to try anything. They don't want to actually work their asses off to make the world a better place. They would rather bitch and moan and wag their fingers and tell people that they are horrible individuals and have somebody else make the world that they want. And when it actually starts going that way, they're pissed off that it's not the utopia that they want. Right down to the fact that, not to get too political, but the fact that people are calling for revoking the First Amendment. First Amendment. I'm not going to get into second. First Amendment. Your right to free speech. Why? Because they don't like what people have to say. If you start having characters who are no longer the best, the strongest, the toughest, the smartest, You're
not allowed to have exceptional people.
No, you're not. Not even the kindest. The most loving. Poor Starfire. She's supposed to be a love being, and she's continually being turned into a slut and being held up for that, where her message wasn't even that. Her message was indeed free love. She was the epitome of a love child. Just using that as an example. And so the quickest and easiest, because they're all about easy, is to attack body type. And if guys like to look at tits, chop them off. If guys like a curvy figure, fill that out with donuts. Or starve it off to the point where you've got a rail thin stick wandering around.
Or somehow you turn the gorgeous goddess known as Miss Marvel into Carl Manverse.
Exactly. Going back to, because I brought it up earlier, faith. You know what? Fine, you want to have a superhero that shows that you don't have to have the body of a goddess in order to right wrongs and triumph over evil and be for love and justice. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. The problem is make a goddamn character out of them. Faith is not a character. Faith is a punchline. Faith is every fat chick comedy you have ever seen, specifically the ones that aren't funny. Faith is a joke without a punchline, and all she does is eat food and feel sorry for herself that she's fat and feel like that she can't achieve anything and happens to bumble her way through life, and in the end she magically is able to right wrongs and things like that. But it's not because she herself is actually working towards it. She's a joke. And I find that absolutely and completely God, I'm so upset I'm losing my words. I used to be fat. I used to be a fat girl. You know who I looked at as for inspiration to, I can still achieve things even though I'm fat. I can still be attractive even though I'm fat. Sailor Moon. Why? Because she had an eating disorder. She's constantly being bitched at by her friends and her boyfriend telling her she's eating too much and that she's too fat. Her parents keep telling her she's too fat. At school, they put her in weight loss fat camp because she eats too much. But at the end of the day, she still is there for her friends. She can fight the bad guys, and she comes through when she's needed most. Having an eating disorder did not define the character. That's the problem with Faith. Faith is a punchline. She's a joke.
Well, since you brought it down to the personal again, let me ask you, what was the big change in your life that made you reject the body image idea and just flat out say, no, goddammit, I'm going to get fit?
I had a boyfriend who found me attractive, and I knew I'd get more sex if I was thinner.
Oh, really? I actually hadn't heard that answer. So really dropping a inordinate amount of weight and running laps and lifting weights was strictly because of me and my schlong.
Yes. Josh had decided at the time that he was going to get in shape. And I figured, well, if my boyfriend was going to be getting in shape, so our dates were going to the gym together. But I decided I wanted to do that.
Really? I thought it had more to... I thought it was self-confidence and all that.
No, that came later. And that encouraged me to keep it up and to not yo-yo. That was the other thing. I never dieted. I watched my mom go through horrendous diets growing up, and I promised myself I was never going to do that, that if I was going to lose the weight, I was going to do it right.
Exercise, and you became kind of a nutrition freak. Mm-hmm. Which I don't mind. It's good for me, too. Is there anything else you want to add to this?
I'm sure there is, but we can let us. How about you listeners? Do you have questions for me based on what I've talked or ranted about? And we'll get to them.
And because we're running a little long here, I figure next time we'll talk about how your article was the inspiration for my latest project. Well, this is J.Ishiro Finney signing us out, and this is...
I am Kat Rocha, editor-in-chief and owner of 01 Publishing. That's the number 0, the number 1, publishing.com, where you can find many of J.Ishiro's titles.
Don't apologize for liking the tatas.